May have begun in the sea, it is a very long time since our ancestors left it. Evolution has made us completely unadapted to living underwater. The deep is a very hostile place for a human being. A diver's life depends totally upon his equipment. Not only that, most offshore diving depends on specialized personnel and equipment on the surface, continuously supplying breathing gas and heat. Divers are professionals. They require professional attitudes from other offshore personnel. Divers are required by law to possess certificates of technical proficiency and of medical fitness. And so their initial selection and training reflects the importance of both these aspects of diving.
Get good communications inside.
The need for technical proficiency is obvious, for divers work in a totally different environment to everyone else. One important difference is the pressure, for apart from the lack of air, it is the increased pressure that makes the underwater environment so unlike everyday life. The pressure at the surface of the Earth is caused by the atmosphere, which extends into space for about 100 kilometers. The pressure at sea level due to all this air is the same as the pressure due to 10 meters of water, about the height of a two-story house. So, for every 10 meters descent, another atmosphere's pressure is exerted on the diver. The real problems occur not in going down, but rather in coming back up, because some of the gas the diver breathes dissolves in his body tissue and his blood. The amount of this breathing mixture that dissolves depends on pressure and time. The greater the pressure and the longer the time, the more is dissolved. If the pressure is released quickly, the breathing mixture comes out of solution in the diver's body in the form of bubbles. These block the bloodstream. The result? Decompression sickness, the bends. Mild cases cause pains in the arm and leg joints. Severe cases may lead to partial paralysis and even death. So divers need to stop or slow down on their way back to the surface. Then, as the pressure is slowly decreased, the breathing mixture has time to diffuse out from the blood. Over the years, decompression tables have been evolved. These indicate how long and at what depths or pressures divers must wait during an ascent. The tables depend on blood circulation, which varies from individual to individual and from day to day. So occasionally minor cases of the bends develop even when well-proven tables are followed. If this should happen, the diver must be repressurized in a compression chamber. Decompression follows by slowly releasing the pressure. So, although it is only rarely necessary, divers must have access to a compression chamber for at least 12 hours after surfacing. A diver who has just surfaced still has a great deal of the breathing mixture dissolved in his blood and body tissues. Should he need to dive again, more restrictive, repetitive tables must be used to calculate his decompression times. Decompression is only one of the problems divers have to grapple with. Another is buoyancy. Normally, the human body floats, so divers have to weight themselves down. One consequence of this lack of effective weight is that most tasks will take longer underwater than on dry land. It also means that divers are extremely susceptible to all water movements, whether natural, such as tidal flow, or man-made. Suction from intakes for cooling and fire hydrants, as well as flow from ballasting operations and ships' propellers or thrusters, represent deadly threats to divers. The most dangerous place of all, however, is the surface and its immediate vicinity. It is then that divers are fully exposed to the forces of wind and waves, as well as the potential dangers posed by any surface operations. For short and comparatively shallow dives, a simplified bell is often used. These wet bells are not pressure containers. They allow the divers to stand in the wet with their heads in a bubble of air. Communications pass along an umbilical to the surface. Although divers are supplied with breathing mixture through the umbilical, they always carry an emergency gas bottle on their backs. How long this supply will last depends on the depth. A cylinder which would provide enough for 1 hour's breathing at atmospheric pressure will only last 10 minutes at 50 meters depth. And 50 meters is as deep as one can go breathing air, for there are serious problems associated with breathing air under pressure. Air is 21% oxygen and 78% nitrogen. Other gases make up the remaining 1%. At atmospheric pressure, referred to as 1 bar, 78% of the pressure is due to the nitrogen. So the partial pressure of the nitrogen is 0.78 bar. The partial pressure of the oxygen is 0.21 bar. Underwater and under pressure, the partial pressures increase. At 50 meters, the partial pressures are 6 times greater than at the surface. So nitrogen has a partial pressure of 4.7 bar. At these higher partial pressures, nitrogen narcosis begins to appreciably affect a diver. He feels intoxicated and his judgment becomes impaired, a state of affairs which reduces his efficiency and may threaten his life. Reducing the percentage of nitrogen in the air would solve this problem, but this means increasing the percentage of oxygen. Oxygen, at these higher partial pressures, starts to become poisonous. Eventually, a hyperoxic crisis occurs. Thus, a new gas mixture is needed, and heliox, a mixture of oxygen and helium, has been developed to fit this requirement. For diving at 100 meters depth, oxygen concentrations of about 5% are common. In most European countries, it is a legal requirement that heliox is used for all diving deeper than 50 meters. Although heliox has its drawbacks, it solves the narcotic problems of breathing air under pressures greater than 6 atmospheres. It does not solve the decompression problem. As far as a blood vessel is concerned, a bubble of helium is as bad as a bubble of nitrogen. As the depth increases, the decompression time increases. 1 hour's work at 50 meters requires nearly 2.5 hours decompression. 1 hour's work at 100 meters requires approximately 10 hours decompression. 1 hour's work at 150 meters requires about 29 hours decompression. For a given depth, decompression time will increase with working time, but only up to a certain point. Then, the blood and body tissue is saturated with gas. No more can dissolve. At 100 meters, this occurs after 6 hours. The decompression time is then 74 hours, just over 3 days. If the diver stays down at that depth for 5 days, he will still need 74 hours decompression. If he stays down for a month, the decompression time will still be 74 hours. To take advantage of this, the technique of saturation diving was born. Divers live under pressure in a hyperbaric complex for periods of up to a month. The pressure inside is roughly 1 atmosphere less than at their working depth. They're carried to work under pressure in a diving bell. So the only time the divers need to go through decompression is when they leave the hyperbaric complex at the end of their month's work. Food, clean clothes and other needs are passed to them through a small airlock. Appearances are deceptive. Although these two men are inches apart, it will take 3 days decompression before the divers under pressure will be able to step out into normal atmospheric pressure. In reality, they are 3 days travelling time away. It is the diving bell that transfers the divers under pressure that makes this system workable. Here, a diving bell is attached to a hyperbaric complex. Heliox is pumped into it until the pressure is the same as in the hyperbaric complex. Both doors then open easily. The divers enter one at a time. Once inside, the doors are closed. The bell is then lowered. On the way down, the inside door of the bell cannot be opened because of the comparatively high pressure inside. At the working depth, the internal and external pressures are equal, and the doors open easily. One diver, the bellman, always stays in the bell. The other divers are connected to it by an umbilical. This supplies the heliox mixture, heated water, and a communication link. The bellman checks the breathing mixture supply and maintains the divers' umbilicals at a length that enables them to work easily. The only reason he would ever leave the bell would be to help a diver in difficulties. On the way up, the procedure is reversed. The bell ascends without decompression stops to the hyperbaric complex. As the pressure there is similar to that in the bell, the divers enter without difficulty or delay. There they eat and rest. With this system, while the first team sleeps, another team continues the work. Outside the complex, the diving supervisor and his life support team also work in shifts. The divers are breathing gas containing 5.2% oxygen and the remainder helium. Apart from the enormous cost of heliox, it makes communication extremely difficult as it deforms speech. So much so that electronic unscramblers are needed. Inside the chamber, the divers have to lip read to understand one another.
Okay, fire away, mate. Couple of Fridays, is that? Roger. Roger, mate. Okay, how would you like your rum steak? Come back? No, sorry, I didn't get that, mate. You would like it quickly. Roger, roger, mate. Is there anything else you like?
Another big drawback of helium is its enormous heat capacity. The human body is accustomed to losing some of its heat to the air, but the heat loss in helium is 6 times greater than that in air. Even in room temperatures, the body could not cope with such a large heat loss, much less so in the temperatures experienced in cold seas. A diver's thermal balance must always be carefully maintained underwater. Overheating is as dangerous as underheating. All chambers and diving bells operating at pressures or depths greater than 50 meters are required by law to be heated. At depths greater than 150 meters, the diver's breathing mixture must also be heated. All diving bells carry emergency survival kits for each diver. Seen here, during a training exercise, the kit is used if the heating fails. As 80% of the heat loss is through the lungs, it includes a heat-exchanging breathing mask. The remaining 20% of the loss is through the skin. Even with this kind of insulation, the time a diver can survive in heliox without heating is very limited. Once a diver has managed to cope with the difficulties of breathing heliox under pressure, buoyancy, communication problems, and heat supply, he then has to begin to work. And the variety of tasks he is required to do is enormous. Divers are obliged to keep records of each dive they make, just as the diving supervisor must keep a log of every diving operation.
30, just give us a quick count just while you're going down on the unscrambler.
In any deep diving operation, life support is the prime concern of the surface team. The diving supervisor is the man who, quite literally, has the life of his divers in his hands. A recent development which gives the diving supervisor eyes as well as ears is the remote-controlled vehicle, known to all divers as Snoopy. Equipped with a self-contained TV camera and lights, its thrusters enable it to travel in any direction underwater. Once there, it is operated by a team on the surface, usually under control of the diving supervisor. It is the diving supervisor alone who has the authority to start a dive and regulate its performance.
Yeah, go ahead, diver one. Roger, roger. Oh, Bell, can you just check if diver one's unfulling? He thinks he might have it snagged around somewhere, and see if you can pull it clear for him, please.
Diving can be stopped by him, as well as by the installation manager or the ship's master. In any emergency, the diving supervisor will always need immediate access to communications. He may also need medical help and extra facilities. He will be the only one who knows what he needs. Diving operations are very similar worldwide, but in the North Sea, some of the most extreme conditions are faced. So, on 24 hours a day standby at Aberdeen Airport, are two small hyperbaric chambers owned by a consortium of 11 major oil companies. These chambers can be flown by helicopter and connected to any diving complex in the North Sea. Thus, divers under pressure, in need of urgent medical attention, can be brought back to the large hyperbaric hospital chamber at the base. Should an installation need to be evacuated, then any divers under pressure will need a means of escape, such as a hyperbaric lifeboat. It is the diving company's responsibility to have a contingency plan. Fortunately, it is rare that such eventualities have to be faced. Under more normal circumstances, there is still a great deal that everyone on an installation can do to help the divers. For safe diving practice does not end with the diving team. Everyone working in the vicinity of a diving operation needs to be aware of it. Divers working underwater are out of sight, but that should not mean out of mind. Many installations operate a permit-to-work system, but whatever the system, it is crucial that everyone is aware where and when diving operations are taking place. As well as everyone on the installation, all vessels operating in the vicinity must be informed. The correct signals must be displayed at all times, and heavy lifts must be avoided above divers and compression chambers.
Diving operations will be taking place at the northwest corner of the platform, and all personnel are advised to keep clear of this area. All over-the-side work must cease. I repeat, divers are extremely vulnerable to debris dropped from rigs.
Some debris can travel long distances underwater, so it's not just above the diving operations that it matters. Everyone hears the announcement that diving is beginning, but may later forget about it, although the diving operations may be continuing. Oxygen tanks in support of diving operations can leak, so no flammable materials of any kind should be kept near them. Fires have occurred inside pressure vessels, but only very rarely, and never when heliox mixtures have been used. If there is any doubt about any operation, the diving supervisor will be able to advise the installation manager. The diving supervisor will need all available weather and tide information. After all, his principal concern is the life of his divers, who are often performing tasks vital to the installation in difficult conditions. They need the awareness of everyone else working in the vicinity. Without diving, many developments offshore would not have taken place, or would have taken place much more slowly. Divers are an essential but vulnerable part of any offshore operating team. They are strangers in a totally hostile environment. With training and technology, they are able to work there. They don't, however, need any additional hazards. Give the diving team the help they need.